Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Tours Are Here to Stay, presented by StreetEasy. You are welcome to submit questions at any time using the questions pane of the control panel. And if your computer speaker system isn't working, try selecting telephone in the audio panel to dial in via phone. Just a note, today's webinar is being recorded. And I'd now like to introduce your host, Senior Manager of Industry Communications at StreetEasy, Lisa Holden. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, and hello and welcome to everyone on the line today. I'm Lisa, and my job is to make sure StreetEasy is constantly connecting with and learning from our industry partners, specifically real estate agents like you. I'm very excited about this discussion today because I've spent the first half of 2020 talking with real estate agents about how they're adapting and changing their, best practices according to the changes that coronavirus has demanded of all of us. And I'm thrilled to bring in 3 agents who have been particularly impressive in their approaches to managing these changes. And so these are 3 smart, forward-thinking professionals who are here to have a peer discussion about consumer demands and how those have shifted during phases 1 through 3, and brainstorm some strategies for adapting to new expectations that will likely extend long after restrictions are fully lifted. So let's get to it. I'd like to introduce each of our speakers, starting with Nikki Beauchamp. Nikki, come on the line. And I think you may be muted, Nikki. We'll give.
Looks like Nikki's audio did drop out, so maybe we'll bring on our next and I'll troubleshoot with her in the background.
All right, well, welcome Stacy Froelich.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stacy Froelich.
There we go.
You got it? Okay, I'm Stacy. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really honored to be included in this panel. I have been a real estate agent in Manhattan for 20 years. I have the most wonderful team of talented agents. We're at Compass, and we're excited to share what we've learned and to learn from others.
Awesome. Welcome, Stacy. Glad to have you. And Nikki, sounds like we've got you live. Welcome.
We've got me back. Thanks. It's always fun to have tech difficulties on a technology-oriented panel. I've been an agent in New York City for over 15 years. I'm with Engel & Volkers, and I've always had to integrate using technology since lots of my clients are not based in the US, they're based abroad. So I'm excited to be here with this fabulous panel.
And we're so grateful to have you. And finally, Joanne Cow, come on down.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joanne Cow. I'm excited to be here with all of you today and my esteemed colleagues. I'm an avid follower of social, tech, digital, and business trends. I'm with Berkshire Hathaway, New York Properties, and I focus on millennials and Gen Z, otherwise known as Henry's high earning, not rich yet.
I love that acronym. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to all 3 of our panelists. Without further ado, let's get into this first topic. So on slide 1, we're going to talk about NYC on pause and how that took us virtual. So back in February of 2020, StreetEasy had about 250 listings with virtual tour capabilities on our site. And then from February to April, that number grew by 700%. And so I guess my question for our esteemed panelists are, why weren't virtual tours kind of part of the listing all along? And I'll kick it to Stacy to start us off.
Well, thank you. So the reality is we really didn't need them for the typical buyer, right? For a buyer who was present in New York and there were no obstacles for them to come physically see the property, we didn't need them. Now, we did Instagram videos and videos of the sort for marketing purposes, but we didn't need to focus so much on people really seeing the property close up virtually. And obviously those needs have changed. It's not always safe for people to come see the property, even if they are physically in New York. And because the need has changed, the need for the technology has changed as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And I do want to make a note to our audience and to our panelists that this conversation is meant to run as such. So panelists, if you have something to add on to something else someone has said, feel free. And for everyone on the line, feel free to use that question panel and throw in your questions. We do have the second half of this webinar totally devoted to all of these topics that you want to cover. So don't be shy about throwing your questions in. Anything to add from the rest of our panelists?
To add on to that, I think that the technology has changed a lot and it's advanced, and it's become so much easier to engage with a virtual tour. And although we weren't always doing it before, for lots of non-local people, you always had to do some kind of a virtual tour. And I think now the expectation has also changed from the consumer, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree. And the market is demanding it, so our job is to provide it.
Exactly. That's that 700% uptick, and that was back in April, and we're seeing it climb. And we'll get into a lot more of that as we go through these. But you know, the next question that I have for you is on our next slide here, and that is essentially, are we over it now? Like, you know, we've talked about virtual tours being important during this time where we were all locked down and couldn't see anything, you know, in person, and now New York is open. So I took a look, and today approximately 35% of the listings on StreetEasy include a walkthrough video or a 3D home tour or something like that. So my question for the panel is, now that New York City is sort of opening up, do we anticipate this number sort of remaining stagnant, going down, or will we see a continued consumer demand for this virtual element when it comes to New York City real estate? Nikki, I'll kick it to you to start us off.
I think we're going to see a continued demand for it. I think that the consumer in New York, abroad, outside of New York, virtual tours had become much more prevalent. And now that people have the opportunity that their first experience, in addition to the professional photography and floor plans, can include guiding themselves through some kind of a tour, I don't think we're going to be able to dial that back. And we also have to look at, as while there's lots of stats talking about people leaving New York, there are also people looking to come to New York for opportunity. And you want to be able to engage that buyer who is browsing online to then make a trip to come to New York and see properties in person.
I think that the video tour is now a standard offering for my team. We won't go back to not including it. Obviously, as technology increases and changes, maybe we will change what that video tour looks like, but we've incorporated the Matterport tour. I actually purchased the camera day one of shelter in place, and it was a great investment that I made. And now that is a standard offering. And not only do we use it for people to see our beautiful exclusive properties from the comfort of their homes, but we also feature each tour on social media, so we can really market the properties using the virtual tour. And prior to coming on today, I just kind of took a look at our dashboard as to how many views we're getting, and we're getting hundreds of views on each of our properties. Virtual tours, the average is 276 views, but some of our properties have over 500 views, and that's just in the last 3 weeks. So I think they're here to stay.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's saying. I mean, it'll just be incorporated into our toolbox and something that we, you know, have for our customers.
Totally makes sense. Another note to audience members on the line, if you hear anything here that really resonates with you, or you kind of want to showcase to your own audience that you're educating yourself on this kind of thing, feel free to grab a quote from any of our speakers here. They've put up their Twitter handles or Instagram handles, and so feel free to follow them on social media and share a quote of something they've said. Feel free to tag StreetEasy in that as well, and we're always happy to see that kind of engagement and, you know, could reshare. So I think that this topic is so interesting because it hits on this notion of changing consumer behavior, and who's watching that more than you folks who are directly in engagement with consumers and us as well. I mean, we recently hosted a consumer event for renters, and we asked them, this was just last month, we asked them, how likely are you to tour apartments in person versus continuing that tour virtually now that, you know, things have opened up? And you can see the stats I put on this slide here. You know, about half are somewhat likely or very likely to do so. Are you finding these numbers to stack up with what you're seeing with your folks who you're engaging with now?
I'll take it. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Joanne.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I do see that, and it really comes down to proximity. You know, I think that if people are in the city, then the preference is likely to see the property in person. And if they're not, then yes, you know, we use virtual tools. And a lot of times I use FaceTime. I deal with a lot of relocation, a lot of renters with students, and then I deal with their parents. We go to different locations. I FaceTime with them and then send them the video afterwards. So, yeah.
And I think it's important to note that it's not as if the virtual tour is replacing the need for people to see the property. So, you know, we have done a lot of deals from when shelter in place started, but none were sight unseen. So either they saw it before shelter in place or they waited until phase 2 when we can see. So even though these consumers had the video tour, it was basically a tool for them to go to first and then look and make sure that when we were physically allowed to show, which was June 22nd, that they had a list of properties that they were really interested in seeing. So they'd done the due diligence using the virtual tools. But in the end, the consumer, for the most part, needs to walk the space physically. And that's the phase we're in now.
Yeah, I think the sight unseen is kind of that unicorn opportunity that occasionally does happen. I'm sure, Nikki, you may have some experience with this.
Or also more so with new developments, that's also very, very common. And I think that one of the great things during sort of the pause, when all of the new developments were offering the opportunities to do the virtual listing, the virtual presentations, and then you could go through those and then you could have your clients accompany. I mean, that was a great opportunity. I have something that's come directly from that. And even with the people who are from abroad, most often I was physically in the apartment FaceTiming or over WhatsApp. So that's very different than relying on somebody else's virtual tour, and different people have different opinions and definitions of virtual tours, you know, and watching someone walk through and having them narrate a tour is very different than using Matterport or an ImmoViewer tour where you can literally just move around at your own pace as you would when you were walking through a property.
I just want to actually piggyback on what you said about the unicorn and also what Nikki said. I just had an accepted offer. These clients are from California. They saw 2 virtual tours. We're in contract. So it does happen, and I think it's going to happen more and more. It's just,
yeah, I have.
Go ahead.
Yeah, similarly, I have one of those from new development during COVID, and I just got an accepted offer, I think it was yesterday, and they came and we narrowed down during COVID using virtual tours and looking at floor plans, narrowing it down to the small subset of properties they wanted to see when they made the trip. They made the trip. We were out in a tropical storm. They narrowed down to a couple of things, and and so it goes. But those virtual tours were an important part of our conversation, in addition to the professional photos and floor plans, to really try and get an understanding for them.
Oh, totally. It's just part of our toolkit now, I think.
Yeah, and I also think it's nice to know that clearly these are dedicated buyers. These are real buyers, right? who are
Exactly.
taking
Nobody's out
time
now
home
who
to
doesn't
look
want to
at the
buy.
tours and look at the pictures and look at the floor plans and then make the trip in this environment. So while we have less physical traffic, because the looky-loos are the people coming, before brunch or after brunch on Sunday to look at 5 open houses, that environment for now is over.
Yeah.
And now the people who we are showing property to physically, safely, with protocols and masks and gloves and booties and Purell and all that stuff, these are real buyers who are looking to take advantage of a buyer's market. And so the changes are interesting and in some ways great changes for our sellers.
It is, and it also qualifies our audience, so
Yeah.
we don't have to run to every single open house.
And you have more opportunities to have these longer, deeper conversations. In many cases, people are talking to you and you don't live with them, so they're so excited to talk to you. They'll talk to you for longer and you'll find out more information that will be useful in the transaction.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the notion of like being able to develop these relationships, but in a different environment. If we go to the next slide, this actually lines up our next topic perfectly here, because I want to talk about relationship management and fostering trust in the digital age. I mean, all 3 of you hit on this notion already that the beginning of the relationship now happens virtually. I mentioned at the top of the hour that I spend all of my time on the phone with real estate agents, finding out how things are going, how we can help, brainstorming, things StreetEasy can do and things like that. And one agent told me, he said, the goal is always to get the in-person. So quarantine or not, I've got to connect with this person face to face before I can start developing a relationship. And what this agent told me was that it's actually not a good idea to put a virtual tour on a listing because it robs you of the opportunity to get that in person. Now, I'm curious, and I'll start with Joanne on this one, what you think of that mentality.
I disagree wholeheartedly. I mean, that assessment is incorrect. Business has been conducted for decades without face-to-face. Over the years, I built some solid, loyal relationships when I used to work in advertising, and people would follow me from company to company without ever meeting in person. And frankly, real estate is no different. Our commonality is our interest in real estate, development, design, architecture, whatever it is, and we build the relationship from there. So really, virtual, digital, social, whatever, it's brand building and audience development. It doesn't matter what medium. I mean, we'll find you anywhere because we have to be where you are.
I agree. And I also think there's a lot of opportunity to build trust and relationships virtually. I mean, listen, the first time I met a seller within this period of time on Zoom. Yeah, it was a little awkward, right? But we did it and it worked. And they did a tour on their phone of their property so I could price it for them. We adapted. Also, I have clients right now who are sheltering in place out of the city. So I go physically to the properties and I FaceTime them and I zoom in on the cabinets and the appliances. And the fact that I am doing that for them before they make the trip, they are so appreciative and grateful. And that's a relationship that we're building virtually.
It's about information, it's building rapport, and you can do that in any platform. And if you want to make the argument that there's a distinction between the online version and the offline version, that's just going to lead to a huge disconnect between the 2 personas. You should be exactly the same online and offline and the same things that you would do in person. Maybe you're spending more time on the phone, or maybe you're on Zoom. I mean, I have been Zooming from my house for months, which 4 months ago, if I had a conference call or a video conference, I would go out of my way to make sure that I was sitting in the office with the perfect background. I mean, now I've done it, and I've just gotten off my, with the hand, I know. Now I've done it, I've gotten off the Peloton, and I'm going, you know what, I'm a little, but they're like, okay, this is great. I just did my workout and we have our conversation.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you hit on that, because it's the perfect way to foster trust is through that level of authenticity. You're literally in your home. and you're reachable.
You're literally your home. You're so reachable and you're so approachable. And honestly, with people sheltering in place, it can be exhausting to be around the same people all day, every day, for weeks and then months. You are a new person. They're probably going to be really happy to talk to you. You
Yeah.
know, have a virtual coffee with them, have a virtual cocktail. Find ways to build those relationships, the same things that you might do offline.
Absolutely.
And I guess this all lends itself to the notion that, you know, this is something that, of course, was highlighted and brought about because of these shelter-in-place orders. But the fact of the matter is, there are elements of this that will stay with us long after lockdowns are lifted, and that's because of ease of transaction, ease of connection. You know, it's actually easier to stay connected and feel connected to someone when you know that they're accessible, you know, to you, and they're willing to have a conversation with you, even if they don't have that perfect background. And, you know,
Yeah, and you know what? Before this, when we used to have our team meetings in the office, not everyone would make it every week because if they had a showing right after, whatever, like we haven't missed one team meeting now that they're on Zoom. Not one of us has missed it, and none of us will again. And I think even when the office opens, we will probably continue to have our team meetings on Zoom, because then you could start your day like that and then go show from wherever you are. Also, I never really attended all the company sales meetings because they were at a specific time. And if the location didn't match where I had to go after, I couldn't make it. Now I'm on them all the time. So there are really good changes that have happened with this that I truly believe are here to stay, including the virtual tour of the property.
Yeah.
Love that.
I mean, I've grown to love our weekly team meetings. I love seeing everybody's faces. It's like, oh my God, I miss you guys, but it's great to see you on the screen.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Like Hollywood Squares.
It's great to see someone's background, you comment on their photos, all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that we're all so comfortable in this world of technology, and we'd rather do the meetings on Zoom and things like that, I want to talk about the notion of agents becoming tech pros. You know, like obviously the stay-at-home orders mandated that we had to adjust our ways and get more comfortable with tech. And now that these consumer demands are out there, you know, I want to talk about where the agent's responsibility lies in terms of adopting new technology, being comfortable with it, and teaching clients, you know, providing this technology to the people with whom you do business. Stacey, I'll kick it to you to start us off on this one.
Sure. I mean, I absolutely believe it is our responsibility to learn new technology, to be consistently reading about new technologies, to be watching what other agents are doing in our region and other regions, to see what other industries are doing, to attend seminars, now possibly webinars, because we are professionals and we have to change with the time. And I have to believe that the reason all three of us are successful agents is because we have the ability to adapt. And it's very crucial right now to be able to adapt and continue to learn at any age. I'm 46. I have embraced technology because it's the only way to be successful. So I'm pretty sure that if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's necessary, and it's our job, and we always work on it.
And I think it's so necessary, and it's become so much easier. Our phones are so much easier to manage. You can DocuSign from your phone. You can hop on a Zoom call. I mean, my dad hopped on a Zoom call the other day to visit a doctor. If he can do that, and he's, you know, well over our ages, I won't disclose his age, and he's like, this is great. And you know, the ease of DocuSign during the lockdown, I was on the phone call with an agent I've known for over a decade, and we're chatting, just catching up, and she goes, you know, I might have a referral for you. Will you do a rental? I said, where's the rental? Let's talk. Half an hour later, I was on the phone with the seller, and within an hour, we had a DocuSign listing agreement for a rental. So 90 minutes from phone call with agent, phone call with the seller, discuss the pricing, here's the listing agreement. All done via DocuSign because the owner is not here, but still the ease of that, that's magic. It's pure magic.
Well, look at surgeons have to learn new techniques. Lawyers have to learn new laws. Banks have to learn about crypto. We have to take CE classes. What makes learning new digital tools any different? I think if you want to compete on a global scale and the world is getting smaller in that way, it's imperative that we learn, what the tools are. Otherwise, well, there's the inevitable.
And embrace them, because I think now the consumer expectation and their comfort with it has grown exponentially during this lockdown time. So they're going to say, you know what, can you just DocuSign me the agreement? Like it's a verb and it's here to stay.
And even since coming back from phase 2, the majority of closings we've had are still being done virtually. So they pre-sign documents. Nobody's in the same place. The managing agents, listen, if managing agents can adapt to virtual tools, then really anyone can. I mean, really, like they were doing, boards are doing virtual interviews.
Zoom. I mean, and back in the day, it was a struggle to get them to do a Skype interview for someone who wasn't here. And now everything is happening. Everybody's Zooming, they're Google Meeting. They're just trying to decide which platform they're using.
And hopefully those things are here to stay. I was a little disappointed that I hear managing agents are back to having you come when you're doing due diligence to read minutes back in their offices. I had hoped that that was a change that they would incorporate going forward, that they could, email them out with a non-disclosure agreement. But I do hear the majority of managing agents are back to at least wanting that done in office. But I think that Zoom interviews and Zoom closings or virtual closings may be here to stay, and it makes life a lot easier.
Ultimately, if that's where our customers are, then we have to be there. I just read this a couple nights ago. McKinsey came out with the consumer sentiment and behavior report for July. Consumer flight to digital saw a 10% increase in July during the pandemic, and many consumers say that they plan to continue online shopping even when brick and mortar returns. Oh, what does that tell us? We're not dictating this, right? It's what our customers are saying and how we facilitate the business for them.
And I think that some people have actually wanted this for a long time, but we have finally caught up because we've had no alternative. When we had the alternative, we used it as our security blanket, and that security blanket has been ripped from us.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think it begs the question, is this a chicken or an egg thing? Did New York City real estate agents not adopt this because they didn't need it, or did they not adopt it because consumers weren't demanding it?
I think it's mostly we didn't. I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I had a listing where when I took the listing, the owner told me at the listing appointment that they wanted to have a virtual closing because they did not want to come back to New York from the West Coast for the closing. What happens? The pandemic hits, and we had a little bit of a giggle because she goes, this is what I always wanted. I didn't want to have to come back, and now they have to do it my way. So I think it's a combination of both, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think companies we are all pretty forward-thinking companies. I'm at Compass, and one of the reasons I joined Compass was because of their focus on technology. And in the beginning, it was focused on technology for us agents to make us more efficient. And I think that, all of our companies saw that on the wall and have been planning for the future. Now, obviously, none of us knew that there would be a global pandemic, but it didn't take very long for any of us to change and adapt and have the systems we needed to conduct business, because our companies were prepared for a technology or digital world. And I think we're very fortunate for that.
We are. We very much are.
Yep.
Yeah, thinking a couple steps ahead is important here, and kind of taking a step back and looking at the landscape and saying, well, a few people are wanting this now, and what would the world be like if we were able to offer this, and see how things change along the way. I think that's great. Into this notion of phase 2. I mean, as of yesterday, New York is in phase 4, which is great, but ever since phase 2, real estate has been open for business to an extent. But obviously New York has put in some guidelines and certain changes to in-person meetings to minimize risk. And so we know that virtual tours are important. We know that virtual tours are something that consumers are demanding at this point. But once you get past that virtual tour and you are in person with someone, it is your responsibility as an agent to communicate those guidelines and what you need to do in order to have a safe in-person encounter. So I'd love to hear from you. Are you finding that most clients and home shoppers know about these guidelines, and how are you kind of implementing them and communicating them to your clients? Nikki, I'll start with you.
Well, I have found that most people not only know about them, but they appreciate them. They love to hear the detail and the care that goes into the pre-appointment prep and post-appointment, and understanding sometimes how the timing has to work, particularly for listing agents, making sure that you're wiping down before and after, and people are coming prepared. I ordered little PPE kits and I ordered hand sanitizer, and I have not yet had to hand anybody a PPE kit, because everybody has come prepared with their gloves and their masks and their hand sanitizer. And I'm actually really, really impressed by the consumer adoption and understanding that, particularly with the disclosure forms and the health questionnaires, that it's also an attempt that, should something occur, it's a way for us to know who we have to contact so that they can also appropriately contact people in case of any incidents of exposure. So I've had no problems, and I've been sending almost everything, with almost one exception today, via DocuSign.
Yeah, no, there's no pushback. Everyone is appreciative of our efforts, I believe, to come out in this environment. We're appreciative of them for coming out in this environment. We have to get the disclosure forms signed prior to the appointment. We have COVID kits in every listing as well. And I think that it's an environment that works. And I think that all consumers have no issues with it.
No, it's a show of respect, of mutual respect of the apartment, the building, everybody who's there, and it shows good faith. Why wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the one area that can kind of create some confusion is that different buildings have building level requirements. So communicating with the listing brokers as you're trying to schedule things to make sure that you're prepared, whatever the building level requirements might be, whatever the specific owner may require. I mean, the owner may insist that you have to have booties or take your shoes off. So preparing, and a lot of that broker to broker communication is great. And I will tell you, almost every time I've called the broker to have this discussion, we end up in like a 30-minute discussion, and we're bonding with each other, telling each other about our experiences through the pandemic with the listing. What are you experiencing on the market? So in a way, this is bonding us all closer together, and we're going to be better on the other side of it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sounds like some relationship management in the digital age to me.
Virtually connected.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, listen, we've got some audience questions. So if we can kick to the next slide, audience members on the line, here's a quick rundown of how you submit those questions. So your dashboard there will give you what you need. So you'll see that question bar, and you can type in whatever it is you'd like to discuss with our panelists. We've got a few already, so I'll kick off with them as they come in here. The first one is, do you have tips for creating effective video tours? Stacy, do you want to start?
I mean, I believe the best video tour on the market right now is the Matterport. It is extremely easy to use. I do own it, but you don't have to. All of the photographers are doing Matterport tours now. It's just so easy to do. And not only does it take a video tour of the property, but it also takes a floor plan of the property. So you can use it for many different reasons. You know, we used to do those tours where you had the agent walking through, and you know, we're all very busy, and I think we all have, you know, a little attention deficit now, right? We have a lot of things, a lot of balls in the air. So those are frustrating because you can't go at your own pace. You have to like wait for the broker to walk into the next room and open the door and look at the dialogue of the shiny cabinetries. And so this in the Matterport, it's actually genius because you can do it at your own pace and you can zoom in on the things that matter to you as a consumer. So I love the Matterport, and I think that that is the best product to use, whether you do it yourself or hire someone. I don't think it matters.
I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention that Zillow has a 3D home tour app that anyone can download to basically use their iPhone to take a panoramic photo of a space and turn that into a 3D tour.
We had a client use it because our client was a doctor in the hospital, and you know, we felt it wasn't safe to access the property and especially in the beginning to do the video tour. So we actually sent her the link, and they did the video themselves and sent it to us, and we put it on the website, and you know what, it was good, and people were able to access it.
Nice, great to hear. Yeah, user friendly. Easy to download. Anyone else tips on good virtual tour experiences?
Yeah, user friendly and free. I mean, a couple of years ago, we started doing. So I also do Matterport. Interestingly enough, for a listing I just took, the owner's question was not if. He was like, when is the Matterport being done? But also we've done sort of the Theta 360 tour that is also very easy to kind of navigate from your phone. And I would just say try and figure out the most cost-effective way for you to do it and make it a part of your standard offering so that now you're differentiating yourself in what you're offering clients in terms of marketing.
Sounds like it needs to be done. The virtual tour is the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. And I mean, we have smartphones, and you know, you can try do a walkthrough with your smartphone. You know, test it out. Get comfortable with the idea of doing these things. I did one yesterday. It was kind of an interactive, dynamic showing where I was on my phone. I sent a link to the client, and they were able to just ask me questions as I walked through the apartment, but they didn't have to, and it was just, they didn't have to download anything. They just clicked and they asked questions. And once it was done, it was recorded, and they can share it forward with whomever they need to make a decision. So lots of interesting things out there. Explore.
Yeah, I think we as human beings, our biggest enemy is ourselves. Just forget it. You know, nobody remembers. We're on 15-second segments on Instagram. Nobody remembers. You make a mistake, you're the only one that remembers the mistake.
True. And we are an obstacle to ourselves to be on camera too a lot. And, you know, I always remember Tom Ferry saying, you know, everyone knows what you look like, you know, like get over it. People know what you look like. And it's so true. And I always repeat that in my head when I'm going to take a video of me with me in it. And it's true. People know what you look like. Don't overthink it. Just do it.
And people are happy to see you. I started doing more like little videos, even like on my Instagram stories. And the text messages that I got, they were like, oh my God, we're so happy to see you. We're happy that you're doing well. Tell us about this. Tell us about that. So, and I have been not the best person at adopting video for the last 10 years. And now I'm over it. I send bomb videos. I send text messages. I sing to people happy birthday, and I can't sing.
I did a TikTok with my 12-year-old. That was scary, but you know what? People loved it.
Yeah, it's going back to the notion of that agent saying you're always trying to get the in-person, you are always trying to connect. And so sometimes that on-camera moment, especially when it's unplanned, especially when it's authentic and raw and real, a FaceTime chat walking through an apartment might not be the clean and polished presentation and production that you're used to, but that can be this moment for connection. And I think that's what I'm taking away from this.
And look, our FaceTime today is 10 times better than like the flip video cam I used to use a million years ago.
Yeah.
10 times better.
Yeah, I do want to comment on the Matterport though. For smaller properties, it doesn't work as well. It's great, and it also depends on, I think, budget and what, and all that stuff. I mean, I think for Matterport, it's great for certain price ranges, not necessarily some other, rental properties.
Yeah, Matterport now has an offering that you can view it from your iPhone, and you can download the app. And I think the first one that you try is actually free and you upload, but it's maybe like $10 a month for a certain number to have uploaded. But you can try doing it from your iPhone if that's more budget friendly, to try and see if that's something that works.
Yeah, for
I
us,
downloaded the
we
app.
do it for
yet.
every size property. We haven't had any issues. The only thing I would say that the Matterport can't do is outdoor space. It actually, the camera itself needs walls. So if a property has a balcony, you can't go outside, or a terrace. But we haven't had an issue in our smaller properties, and we've actually used it for everything. And then you just have to make sure the outdoor space is photographed and on the floor plan.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Another question here on sort of anticipating the future. So everyone get out your crystal ball. But no, I think there is something very important to address about what's coming next. So what this person says is, today it's virtual tours, but what's next? How can we anticipate what consumers will want from us in the future? And I think, Joanne, I'm gonna start with you.
For the future, I mean, who knows? We don't know what's going to happen next. I think the importance is to be open to change, to be malleable, to be flexible, because, this saying of it's always been done this way, well, so what? It's irrelevant, because our customers are doing things another way, and the world is doing things another way. So be open to change and try.
Very good advice. I think there definitely will be some level of virtual reality entering into our tools at some point. What that exactly means, I don't know. I know that we have a tool where if you have an older kitchen and you want to see how it might look with different cabinetries, we can do a virtual, not virtual staging, but I'm saying they could like take the picture and show you what it looked like in another kitchen similar to yours.
Yeah.
Obviously we have virtual staging and all of that, which is good and bad, right? You don't want to trick the consumer into thinking a property is one way when it's not. But when used properly, I think it's a really good tool. And I'm sure there's going to be more virtual reality entering into our lives in the future, but who knows what that's going to be. And our commitment is just to learn about it when it comes, when it enters, when it enters the market.
And I think that, what we're talking about is information. The consumer wants information, and they want information about properties that they're potentially interested in. The forms in which we deliver that information are going to continue to change and evolve for as long as we're in the industry and long after, I've retired. So it's just make sure you have the information and learn the new ways that consumers are interested in having that presented to them.
Yep.
Speaking of the ways that consumers are interested in having stuff presented to them, do you ever find yourself in a situation where, we've talked a lot about the fact that consumers generally want a virtual tour first before they see something in person. Do you ever kind of direct folks to a virtual tour before you're willing to connect in person, or how do you manage that conversation around, well, you should check out the 3D tour before we all risk our lives?
Well, what we've done is, it's interesting because we have virtual tours on every single one of our properties, but for some reason we still get a lot of emails from the consumer or from other agents. Is there a virtual tour? So what we've done is now change some of the language in the write-up to say virtual tour attached, just to point it out to people, because it's a button on there already, like the floor plan or the photos, but I think people aren't used to it yet. So we have tried to point out that it's there. And I definitely send to buyers who are not physically present, for sure. But I don't ever get a request for a showing physically for one of our exclusives and say, I don't ask them if they have viewed the virtual tour yet, because I assume that if they're asking for a physical showing in this environment, that they have done their due diligence and they're serious buyers and they're interested in my property.
Yeah.
It's interesting how many people miss the virtual tours on listings. And I think it's a conversation the same way, because sometimes also people ask specific questions that can lead you to believe that they haven't seen the tour or they haven't looked at the floor plan, and it's an opportunity for a discussion. And you can kind of discuss, well, tell me more about what you're looking for, and then you can kind of talk. If you can get them on the phone or a Zoom call, you can kind of talk through what the flow of the property is like. I think everything is an opportunity to have a discussion and go deeper and have a better understanding of why they might be asking something, whether it's a virtual tour or something else.
There's a question here about the difference in rentals and sales clients. Are you seeing different things in these two markets?
For virtual tour?
Mm-hmm.
We do them for every listing, rental or sale. I mean, I think I own the camera, so I guess I have the opportunity to do that. I don't know if I would, I don't know what my choice would be as a team leader to do if I didn't and I had to pay for it every time. So I'm grateful that I made the investment in the camera, but we don't differentiate our marketing strategy for rentals or sales. It's the same standard offerings.
How about when it comes
and I
to
think for,
go ahead.
No, I think for us, I mean, I've been doing Matterports, but before that, we have a Theta camera in the office that, the same day the photography was scheduled, when we had interns and they would come and they would just shoot the virtual tour. I don't think that differentiation really makes sense from that perspective. You're kind of establishing what your hallmarks are as a broker and your brand and what you provide to the client. You were saying there might be some, I still call out the same things as I'm walking through. The apartment is the apartment is the apartment. The only difference might be, here's how much it costs to buy, and here's how much it costs to rent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine the only, the things you would call out would be similar to what you'd call out in person for when things need to be replaced and whose responsibility that falls on, whether you're renting or buying.
Always
Yeah, it's
highlight the washer
market.
dryer.
Yeah, both the rental market and the sales market right now, they're both challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, the honest answer is it's challenging. It's in a challenging environment, experience and knowledge and ability to grow and learn and change and adapt to new technologies is just crucial in any market, but it's more crucial than ever. And, we just have to take one day at a time and learn about our consumer and learn about their new needs. Because it's challenging to be a renter and it's challenging to be a buyer and it's challenging to be a seller. It's challenging to be a landlord. It's challenging to be an agent. So, we're all in this together.
And we have the time now to learn, I mean, we're stuck inside ostensibly for the most part, and things are a little bit quieter because of the summer. There really is no excuse just to try, and don't get overwhelmed. Try one, just play with one thing and then take it from there.
Good advice.
Well said. I love this question, and I think it's a great one to end on. You know, when we think about someone who is maybe someone who's not naturally tech savvy, or not someone who likes to change things up frequently, what are some resources and recommendations you have for simply getting more comfortable in this world that requires us to all be more nimble? And Joanne, I'll start with you.
I think whatever you're interested in, read about it. It doesn't have to just be real estate. But I will say that NYU, the School of Professional Studies, they have a great program on digital and social media, General Assembly, Learn with Google, Facebook for Business. LinkedIn Learning is a very good resource, and it's for free. If you want to learn, on the digital side, there's TechCrunch, there's Vice, Social Media Examiner, Fast Company, whoever you want to follow, Kara Swisher, Ben Horowitz, Mark Benioff, whatever you're interested in, play around with that, and don't be overwhelmed. Start with one. Just start with one and then, kind of take it from there. But we're in New York City and there are a lot of online classes.
Yeah, and NIRAC and REBNY for agents. Our organizations that govern us, they have a lot of toolkits as well that you can absolutely use. That are
and I think that also all of us are pretty fortunate to be at companies that are also providing a lot of continuing programming for us. And the title companies are out there doing classes, and the lawyers and places. I mean, StreetEasy has some great sort of toolkits and blogs on what to do, and places like Inman. There's a lot of information out there. Search and look at what some of the people that and you follow are doing, and you'd be amazed at how many people might just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. They'll take the 5 minutes. I spent an hour on the phone with someone earlier today who called about something else, and through that conversation, she ended up signing up on DocuSign and setting up her first template. And I'm happy to do that if it helps other people get more things done. In the end, when we end up doing a deal together, everything will be so much more easier. And you'll remember that I took 5 or 10 minutes to chat with about your question. So I think as colleagues, look at your colleagues. People are more open, and I think right now with what we've been through, we're so much more open to share than we may have been in the past.
This, weird notion that it's like a very competitive and backstabbing business, and I've been in this business for 20 years, and I have never found it to be that way. I feel it. Obviously, there are bad apples. But for the most part, it's an extremely collaborative environment, and I think that it's only grown as culture and the companies have become more important. I think our industry has gotten more professional and less willing to accept bad behavior, and also more collaborative. I'm proud to be in our industry.
I feel like we are so much more collaborative now than we were 15 or 20 years ago. And I think also the technology just helps with that. The fact that, you can call, you can text, it's great. Technology is a great equalizer.
It really is. It democratizes everything. And it also, on another note, the internet has democratized consumers, right? So our job isn't necessarily paper pushers, it's to get the deal to close. We need each other as colleagues to get it to close. And it's not just, signing papers.
Well, there you have it. I think I love what you said about this industry being more collaborative than maybe you thought. And to our audience members, each of our panelists have their social media handles here, so feel free to get in touch with them. Feel free to get in touch with us as StreetEasy. And for those who have questions about this or feel like they're not doing enough to educate themselves about this, I want to send a congratulations to you, because just by being on the line today, you're doing something really important for continuing your own education getting more comfortable in this environment and potentially connecting with other agents who are already doing this. And you heard it here first, they're willing to have a conversation about it. So I'll say thank you again and congrats to all of our audience members, and a special thank you to our panelists. It's been just wonderful to hear from you. Quick note, everyone will receive a recording of this webinar shortly following its ending, along with a recap, which you can read on our Agent Resource Center. So with that, I'll say thanks again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.